So how are you doing, Dr. David? How's everything going?
Everything's going very well. I'm glad I'm here. And of course, everybody knows that we've been working very hard over the COVID season, working on our own research, as we always do. So, yes, it's a pleasure for me to be here today.
So what are you trying to talk about today?
Well, I'm trying to talk about something that's been actually online for the last decade. I actually wanted to say something about it. My staff had wanted me to say something about it since it came out 10 years ago. But I wanted to give the person involved more time to review his comments and review his thoughts about the subject matter and to see whether he might learn something and retract his published statements about SCENTLOGIC'S. However, it's now a decade. It's about 10 years and 2 months that he had had this opinion, which he had published online since then. And now we feel we've given him enough time to take it out. So he actually means what he says. So it's time now to really address it so that the community, the detector canine community, will really understand what is going on.
So in other words, there's been some stuff that's been percolating for 10 years that was said by somebody, and that stuff has now been either corrected, changed, or withdrawn. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, it's misinformation, it's institutionalized misinformation, and it's also systemic. And we just wanted to give the person, based on his reputation, an opportunity to learn maybe from others and retract as a mistake. However, over the last decade, not only has it been there, but he also finds time to update it.
Okay. So what is this information has been online for 10 years or so that you want to address? Or this misinformation, should I say?
Well, it pertains to a world renowned trainer by the name of Randy Hare, who then was based in Mississippi, Alabama. He's internationally renowned. He's known as a good trainer. So obviously his comments do matter. And he published an article which started out as with a subject heading of Randy Hare's opinion about SCENTLOGIC'S. And then 5 years later, he changed it to Randy Hare's negative opinion about SCENTLOGIC'S.
And what is this opinion that he talked about? This negative opinion, like he said, like Randy Hare said.
Well, Randy Hare, he happens to be the only trainer in the world who, over the last decade, has never trained a dog that alerts on our product, our brand of product, SCENTLOGIC'S. Um, he's a good trainer, and I believe that his comments are accurate. I believe that it's not that he hates us for any reason, any non-professional reason. He's just voicing his opinion, but however, his opinion is flawed. And as a great trainer who travels around, we felt that over the years have been, he should have been schooled or educated by those who know, especially since he's the only person in the world that we know of, who happens to consistently not be able to train a dog to alert on SCENTLOGIC'S, no matter what real target material training aids that he uses. We consider this to be an anomaly.
So in other words, other trainers have been able to train dogs that hit SCENTLOGIC'S training aids, but Randy Hare's dogs that he trained for some reason cannot alert on SCENTLOGIC training aids. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, all over the world. We've been in business now for we've been in business since 2008, and our products are used by practitioners worldwide. However, Randy here is the only practitioner we know of that whose dogs have consistently missed SCENTLOGIC'S when trained on his training aids. And I guess it got to an extent where he got frustrated about this, that he felt he needed to publish something about it. And his first comment was 10 years ago. And over the past decade, he's not found any reason to retract. All the reason he's found is to update his claim that this anomalous situation actually is the real situation pertaining to our product line.
So from what I hear, now I just want to make sure I hear correctly. Randy here is training dogs using his own
Training aids. Yeah.
And if his dogs do not hit on SCENTLOGIC'S, and other trainers who train dogs using their training aids hit on SCENTLOGIC'S, instead of him to check his stuff, now he wants to blame SCENTLOGIC'S.
That's right.
So I guess an anomaly would be something that's out of the norm. So if other trainers are training their dogs using their methods or their products, and they hit on SCENTLOGIC'S, and Randy Hare's dogs who are trained on his stuff, his training aids, do not hit on SCENTLOGIC'S. So now Randy Hare is saying that, hey, my stuff is not messed up. It is SCENTLOGIC'S.
It is SCENTLOGIC'S. However, since Randy Hare's dogs are the only dogs that consistently over a 10-year period have missed on SCENTLOGIC'S, that means Randy Hare's claim is really anomalous. He's the one with the anomaly, because his dogs are doing stuff that no other dog does, or no other trainer has been able to achieve. No other trainer, I think, has never been able to achieve the consistency of dogs not alerting on SCENTLOGIC'S as Randy Hare has. And it has frustrated him to the extent that he had decided to publish a decade ago. And of course, we found it amusing at that point. However, we decided to respect his opinion and give him time to retract, because we don't say that Randy Hare has any other opinion rather than a professional opinion. We are not trying to say it's personal, and we hope it's not. Actually, we refuse to even think about the fact that it might be personal. He's actually just voicing his professional observation based on his training and the actions of his dogs.
And I looked up the definition of anomaly here. It states something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected. So
that's right.
So if Randy Hare's dogs deviate from what is standard, normal, or expected, that would be an anomaly.
Yes. So we're terming it the Hare Anomaly.
Interesting. So let's go back to what stuff that Randy Hare uses to train his dogs. Can you expand on what Randy Hare uses to train his dogs, or what he claims he uses to train his dogs?
Well, Randy Hare uses real target materials to train his dogs. And
okay, that sounds fancy. When you say real target material, let's use, for example, drugs.
Yes.
Are you talking about the real cocaine, the real coke?
Yes, real cocaine, real heroin. But I must say, without a knowledge of the purity, without the knowledge of the history of those drugs, I don't know where he gets them from. Even if he had a DEA license, that means that they're at least 10 years old. I doubt he knows the purity of any of his materials. And he handles them with his hands all the time, as you can see on some of the videos that he published on his website. He doesn't believe in using gloves. And you can imagine, if you touch if you touch a piece of glass consistently 50 times and try to look through it, you would see that it's actually mud. But he, like some members of the community, believe that once a material is the target material, that it is appropriate and that it is beyond reproach. Without any knowledge of purity, without any knowledge of handling history, without any knowledge of age.
So in other words, the quote-unquote real stuff that Randy Hare claims he uses to train his dogs may actually contain some other stuff in it. It may not be 100% coke.
Definitely not maybe, because nobody actually trains with 100% cocaine. Nobody trains with 100% heroin, because that's not what you find on the streets.
Because I know on the street sometimes, they'll have coke and just try to double up and mix it with stuff.
They most certainly do. I mean, a drug dealer's job is to make a profit. And by the time even the DEA, if you check their reports, over the last decade, the purity of drugs that have been seized has gone down dramatically. Gone are the days like in the 80s where cocaine would come into the United States at 90% pure and above. Now, even if you Googled it, you'll see the average purity is like 60, 66, 68%.
So which means it's possible that while training these dogs with the quote-unquote real stuff, these dogs may actually be smelling something else or be trained on another odor that's the impurity in the so-called real
Yes,
drugs.
and that's normally the case because these impurities tend to have a higher vapor pressure than the actual material that the dog it's supposed to be trained to detect. However, since purity has never been considered a requirement for a training aid, just that they just have the real material. A lot of practitioners that are that believe in what Randy Hare says, they would believe Randy Hare that because what they use, they call it real, and they have a misinterpretation of real, because real, if you do not know the purity, you do not know how real it is, and it is seldom less than, it is seldom 50% pure, to say the least.
So for example, let's use some real world stuff that we hear in the news. Say for example, marijuana. There have been stories of marijuana being laced with fentanyl.
That's very true.
And somebody who uses the Randy Hare method, who thinks he's training a dog on the real stuff, may actually have marijuana that's laced with fentanyl.
Yeah. Well, I'll go better. It's not only until recently that fentanyl has been something marijuana has been laced with. Typically, they will use stuff like baking soda, baby powder, strychnine, which is rat poison, maltose, which is just a powder. They would use any powder that has the color and consistency of cocaine, and then they would use other materials that would make a user think it's cocaine, like strychnine. It's bitter, so that if a user tastes it, it tastes bitter. And they would add stuff like benzocaine or lidocaine to it too, so that it also numbs the tongue.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, most practitioners or law enforcement, how do they know something is cocaine? They just put a little bit of it in a field test kit, shake it, it turns blue. That's the only way they name the material cocaine, without any regard to the purity or any other materials that might be in them. And because of the molecular weight of cocaine, it is not a highly volatile material. So most of these other materials that they would add into it would certainly have a higher vapor pressure than cocaine. They would constitute a higher percentage of components of the headspace of that cocaine, and they would be the items that the dogs would actually learn to detect.
Interesting. So a dog that's trained on the real stuff that may contain all this stuff may actually be learning odor of all these other impurities that you just talked about.
Yeah, rather than the odor of the target material itself.
Interesting. And you talked about officers do a field test on cocaine, and once he turns, did you say blue?
Yeah, for cocaine, it is blue.
So, for example, cocaine that's about maybe 40%, that has 40% cocaine and maybe 60% of impurities, is there a possibility that it can still turn blue too?
Cocaine that's 10% will still turn blue.
Wow. So it's possible that these trainers may be actually using substance that they think is the real stuff.
Yeah, it will test positive for cocaine, but it is not pure enough to be a training aid.
Wow.
Good enough for a user, but not good enough for a detector dog.
So it's good enough to snort.
Good enough to snort, but not good enough to use as a training standard for a dog, because a dog trained on pure cocaine would find that pure cocaine no matter how adulterated and no matter how impure it is. So it's always ideal to train dogs on the pure material, 100% pure, so that they could find that material within any other material.
So in other words, from what I hear, a dog trained on the pure stuff, like SCENTLOGIX'S, we know is 100% the odor of cocaine, can find cocaine in the streets that has impurities.
Yes. A dog trained on 100% cocaine will find a material with 1% cocaine in it.
Wow. So would that be the advantage of why people should train their dogs using SCENTLOGIX'S?
Absolutely. Because SCENTLOGIX'S is a training aid that has been formulated to represent the odor of pure materials. So the odor of SCENTLOGIX'S represent the odor of the material, its representative material at 100% purity.
So about how many trainers would you say have used your products over the years?
Wow.
Just ballpark. I know you cannot count.
I would say we have. I would say we have over 10,000 trainers using our aids worldwide. All over the world, our aids are being used in all continents, including Antarctica.
Wow.
Yes.
And all these trainers, I'm thinking a lot of them are repeat customers.
They're repeat customers, both governmental and private, and we've never had a complaint regarding our aids. I mean, let me state, we have never had a complaint of our aids from a user.
So I guess that would definitely go in line with what's called an anomaly. Over
Yes.
10,000 people trainers haven't had a complaint. And you have this Randy here complaining. That is, I mean, if you look at the definition of an anomaly.
It's an anomaly. And that's why we felt that. And we respect Randy because he's a world-renowned trainer. And he's been all around the world. He's a private trainer, and he's also a police trainer. He's loved by a lot of the police departments in his area. You know, he trains dogs for them. We also respect all patriots. And however, he is the only one who consistently trains dogs that consistently walk our training aids, which are the gold standard of as proven by dogs, not by us, nor the practitioners that use our products.
Well, I guess the dogs are the ultimate judge.
Yes, the dogs are vendor. The dogs are final vendor, not the practitioners.
So from what I hear, it appears you're not really having a problem with the methodology around here and training the dogs, the actual training stuff, but the material. Because if he's a world-class trainer, he's probably training the dog the right way. It's just that he's using the wrong material, and the dogs are actually probably smelling all the impurities that they have been trained to smell.
Most certainly, yes. We have a lot of respect for trainers that train first responders and even other people. And so when Randy Hare first came up with this 10 years ago, we knew it was an anomaly, but we felt it would be nice not to say anything and for him to undergo self-discovery, and that maybe he would retract. After 5 years, I made a comment online to cheer him up. I thought that maybe he might have just put it online and forgotten about it. I made a comment to him personally, and I felt that that would make him think about it again, and that he might pull other practitioners and ask them their opinions, and then see whether they might retract it respectfully. However, when we did that, he went on and added negative to his comments. Initially, it was not Randy Hare's opinion. He made it negative, and then he also blasted it to a wider audience on the World Wide Web. However, I mean, that still didn't stop us from waiting another 5 years. We're scientists. We're very patient people, because if you don't need to be impatient with the truth. I mean, the truth is omnipotent, So we waited another 5 years, but now it's 10 years. It's a decade. It's half a generation. Within this time, we have half a generation of users looking at it. And since this time, he's trained so many people that he is misinforming about scents and odor. So we want this misinformation to stop, because for a lot of these guys that are handler practitioners, failure is not an option. So we do not want them go with the misconception that has been ingrained in them by the renowned Randy Hare. We're now we now feel it's about time, after 10 years, to school Randy, and not just to school him by telling him exactly what is, schooling him, not disrespect, but by letting Randy know why he's getting the results he is getting. It is not unusual for, to the extreme left, for someone to have the situation that Randy Hare is having. Of course, he's never imprinted a dog on SCENTLOGIC'S, However, he has never trained a dog that has alerted on SCENTLOGIC'S when the whole world knows that SCENTLOGIC'S is the gold standard. The scent signature of SCENTLOGIC'S is purer than the scent signature of any of the materials that they are using. The only cocaine equivalent that could equate to the odor of SCENTLOGIC'S is if it's 100% pure and you have 100 pounds of it.
Interesting. So in other words, what Randy Hare could have done was get a fresh dog, imprint the dog on SCENTLOGIC'S, and let us try and let those dogs hit a real coke
and see what happens.
What happens?
Because we know from experience that it is not unusual for a dog trained on real target materials to walk SCENTLOGIC'S. However, there has never been a dog imprinted on SCENTLOGIC'S that has walked a real target material.
And in the real world, that is the ultimate goal.
That's the ultimate goal.
To make sure that dogs are trained using 100% odor so that they can alert on the real stuff in the real world.
No matter how adulterated, no matter what country it's been manufactured, no matter what country it's been deployed, no matter the mode of deployment.
Because if you're just training dogs on the real stuff, the quote-unquote real stuff, there's no telling what you're going to find in Colombia, Brazil, Africa, any other continent.
Yeah.
So the only way to guarantee consistency is to use SCENTLOGIC'S.
Yes, use SCENTLOGIC'S. It is also known that you could train a dog in Colombia on cocaine, and you take the dog to Zimbabwe, and the dog would not alert on their cocaine. The common saying is that, the cocaine is different here. The manufacturing is different here. When the dog sits, just pay the dog and everything will be okay. And so we know that there would be an inconsistency in alert methods when dogs trained in one country are deployed in another. However, with SCENTLOGIC'S, that problem never occurs.
Even when I'm thinking about it, when someone says the real stuff, there's no reference to the quantity.
Yes. There's no reference to the purity.
Purity and quantity.
Yes, there's none.
So it could be a tablespoon or one drop of the real stuff.
Yes, most
that
certainly.
Could be pure.
That could be pure. Because even with that, once you use a field test kit, it's going to test positive.
And from the scientific standpoint, there's no criteria to even determine what he's doing wrong or doing correctly in terms of the right training aids. In terms of, since there's no reference to the purity or the quantity.
There's no reference. However, we know that if a dog wolfs SCENTLOGIX'S, it does not know odor. Because SCENTLOGIX'S could actually be used as a test for dogs to see how well they've been previously trained on real target materials, if real target materials had been the ones used for their imprinting.
And I know you have patents for
Yes.
your United States Patent Office.
Most certainly, yes. We have a few patents. We hold the #1 patent on using alternative scent signature methods to formulate a superior training aid. However, we also hold the patents for developing by using real materials as training aids. However, we prefer the superior patent, which is the one that we typically use, which is using headspace to determine the headspace components of a material, because it allows us to manufacture non-hazardous derivatives, non-illicit and non-hazardous derivatives of this material. We have to understand something. A dog does not find cocaine. A dog does not find heroin. A dog does not find TNT. A dog finds the source of cocaine odor. A dog finds the source of heroin odor. So there is a general misconception of real. The material is not the real. The material's odor is the real. However, Randy Hare still believes that the material itself is the real. So he uses real materials to train his dogs. I don't know. I will call. I don't. The word used is real. I normally use operational targets.
Well, I'm gonna keep it simple. It sounds like you saying real material.
Yeah,
real order.
real material. But really, these are operational targets that they are using, because what is real? I mean, cocaine is not natural. Heroin is not natural. These are synthetics.
That's correct.
Fentanyl is not natural.
Correct.
These are synthetics. The only natural product that there's a certification mandate for is marijuana.
That's correct.
And also we know that if you train a dog on one strain of marijuana, it doesn't necessarily mean that the dog would alert on other strains of marijuana. We have the same situation with smokeless powder. There are many brands of smokeless powder out there, just like there are many strains of marijuana out there, and a dog trained on one brand of smokeless powder would not alert on all brands of smokeless powder. So in one of his statements within his with electronic accusations, he used 4 dogs that were trained on marijuana, and he used marijuana as an example, which is actually not a good idea, because every good trainer knows that if you train your dog on skunk or BC bud, there's a high likelihood that your dog would not alert on the old school strains, the old school Jamaican strains of marijuana. So I guess Randy didn't know this, but of course he seems driven to accuse SCENTLOGIX'S as being a fraud. He's driven to accuse SCENTLOGIX'S as being opportunistic, and this is actually being reflected if you read. I would like the audience to
hear of Randy Hare's opinion, the preamble that you talked about, and he said that this is quoted from Randy Hare's opinion. I have seen many things in the canine training business come and go, so I am always skeptical about new things.
Yeah.
And He also said there are multiple pseudo brands on the market, from paste products to white powder products, to multiple little beads in a cotton bag wrapped by gauze and stuffed inside of another cotton bag. So it appears that he's
opinionated. He's an opinionated skeptic. Not just a skeptic, but a skeptic that feels he has an idea of what the truth is. And it's not unusual for such people to design experiments to validate their own opinion. However, we don't think he did this this time around. Why? Because we use dogs, and you can't force dogs to do things on video. So obviously the actions of his dogs are real. Now the question is why? How? How does that happen? That a dog, that a trainer, a well-known trainer would consistently train dogs that do not alert on our aids. I must say he's not the only one with this opinion. You have some other learned subject matter experts that believe in Randy Hare'S belief. And it's disappointingly so, because canine detection is a very important area, and most of the practitioners, for most of the practitioners, failure is not an option. It's unfortunate that if they ever make a mistake, they're not going to be able to even tell anybody how they made it, because they're gone. So we consider this to be a very important piece of science, not the kind of science where you would want to exploit a community. If you looked at Randy Hare's publication, you would see that his publication was also validated by a few people. It started off by some people commending him for his statements, and it's unfortunate. It was disheartening and unfortunate that one of them was an individual that went by the name of Lisa A. Now, Lisa A happens to be Lisa Albuquerque, who at that point was the head of the Department of Defense military working dog program with the Office of Naval Research. We were excited when we first started, and we anticipated people like Lisa A to at least give us an audience and try out our products, because when we initially developed our products, we were excited that we would at last be of use, or be a body, a company that could be of service to our nation, the USA. However, Lisa Albuquerque shut us down, and we did not know why. However, within the Randy Hare statement, she actually made a comment there, and within that comment, she said that she felt that I was so full of shit that she did not even bother to test our suite of products. I mean, that's unfortunate, because we didn't think it was her decision to take. And how could you make such a decision without even testing the product once, when you had all these dogs and all these facilities and all this money at your disposal?
In other words, all she had to do was test the product.
All she had to do was test the product.
Like the old-fashioned saying, the proof is in the pudding.
That's right. All she needed to do was take the products, call a few military working dog teams to say, okay, I don't think this would work, but, the dog's the final judge. Test out these products and let me know what's up. Then she would have learned a thing or two. However, she didn't do that. So I guess all the products we submitted to them, they just threw it away.
Interesting.
And she thereby putting the military walking dog program in the dark for another decade.
Wow. And there's immense public interest in making sure that dogs are trained on the right stuff. so they can do their job, which is to find illegal substances.
That was what she was hired to do. That was what she was hired to do. However, she came in with opinions too. And the opinion, I mean, it didn't cost us as much as it cost our nation, the way we look at it.
Because obviously you have 10,000 plus trainers using your product.
Yeah. Our nation suffered because of her personal opinion.
Okay. What else would you like to say to wrap this interview up?
To wrap this up, I would like to make a few comments about what Randy Hare has been saying on the websites. Of course, he gave a beautiful documentary of why he felt SCENTLOGIC'S doesn't work. He started it with video 1, about his own personal dog missing methamphetamine and cocaine. And then video 2 was a dog, I think the name dog's was Alex, that's been retired. He imprinted the dog and sold the dog to a police department, and after 7 years, I believe, the dog was retired and they gifted the dog back to him. So those are 2 dogs and of that came from his kennel, and they both walked SCENTLOGIC'S cocaine and SCENTLOGIC'S methamphetamine. When we first heard about this by a gentleman called Chris Fletcher.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but he used retired dogs.
Well, one personal dog, I believe. The first video he had was a dog with a letter C, close something. That was his own personal dog. The second dog, Alex, was a retired dog.
So there's no one telling the last time that dog actively worked. Since obviously if you're retired, the dog's probably not working actively.
Not working active, but I believe he's using the dog as a demonstration dog. Okay. And he has been using he used his own training aids to imprint the dog initially. And when the dog came back to him, he would be using his own training aids, the same as one he's using it with his own personal dog to train this other dog. So personally, we don't see it as being surprising at all that both dogs had the same opinion. Now, when we first heard about the opinions of Randy's dogs by a guy called Chris Fletcher, who was a guy from Australia that knew about our products and knew about the government institutions that were using our products in Australia. He came to train with Randy, and then later on, he came to train to learn the trade with Randy and then buy our aids. I believe Randy discouraged him from going by that route, but they really had no aids to use in Australia, so Chris felt he didn't have a choice but go with SCENTLOGIC'S because that's what a lot of governmental institutions use in Australia. So when Randy's dog walked SCENTLOGIC'S, Chris called us and told us about it, and we knew that was an anomaly. So we knew of a trainer within the area in which he was then in California, because actually Chris had left Randy's place in Mississippi and he was on his way back to Australia, and he was in California. So he gave me a call and I looked around and I knew of a gentleman trainer called Daryl DeSanto, who had never used SCENTLOGIC'S, had never trained on SCENTLOGIC'S, but wanted to buy SCENTLOGIC'S, but was skeptical about buying SCENTLOGIC'S without testing it. So we called up Daryl and we asked whether he trains police dogs in California, whether he wanted to try SCENTLOGIC'S. And then we said, we have a guy from Australia who has SCENTLOGIC'S aids. He doesn't believe in it. And we know our aids work. So could you meet up with a guy and use your dogs that have never seen SCENTLOGIC'S before so that you could have an opinion about the aids? So he agreed. And the story was that when he went to meet Chris Fletcher was in a certain place. He called up Chris and he said, I would like to use my dogs to check these aids. However, I would like you to set them up before I get there, so that all I'm going to do is just going to come, bring my dog, and I'll do a blind search. And that's exactly what he did with 2 dogs and both dogs found SCENTLOGIC'S.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was actually what made Chris more confident about our aids, and he took our aids with him to Australia. And not only that, he eventually became a distributor of SCENTLOGIC'S. Yeah, so Chris is the distributor of SCENTLOGIC'S. We've been to Australia to do seminars with him, and even whilst we were there, he exhibited SCENTLOGIC'S to a group of practitioners in Australia, both explosives and narcotics, and no dog ever walked our product. So it maintained the record that Randy Hare's dog still remained the only dog that walked our product, even though he advised Chris not to. But when Chris got to Australia, every single dog that Chris put on him, the first dog he put on really was a retired dog too, from the prisons.
In other words, Lisa A should have done what Chris did.
Lisa A should have done what Chris did.
Did her own test.
She should have done her own test. So that was the third video of Daryl. And then I think Chris Fleck did the video of Daryl DeSanto checking, and then he sent the video to Randy. And what did Randy do? He published it, and he badmouthed the trainer. It's typical Randy Hare strategy. Most of his training classes are him criticizing other people. He shows videos of others and say how bad they are and stuff like that. So I guess unfortunately Daryl fell into that category, saying how bad his dogs were and stuff. But he has to remember Daryl Santanto was doing it blind with dogs that have never been trained and that have never known SCENTLOGIC'S. So that was the third video.
So those dogs do odor.
Yes. Now, the fourth item that he now brought up to try to disclaim SCENTLOGIC'S was from scientific practitioners. He then brought up the case of an article that was written by a professor at Purdue, Dr. Goodpaster, and he accused us of again being fraud because Dr. Goodpaster's publications actually proved, went along the lines that he trained dogs on SCENTLOGIC'S and SCENTLOGIC'S didn't work. There was a bias that Randy Hare showed subliminally in that, because if you checked that, he did mention that this was done by legitimate PhDs. Now, Randy also says that some of us within SCENTLOGIC'S have fake PhDs. I don't know how that comes to be, but I think that's part of his skepticism. And he and certain colleagues of his have actually gone as far as to call some of us members within SCENTLOGIC'S as being voodoo scientists. But I mean, I'm sure it's not personal. I'm sure he just is mad because his dogs are walking SCENTLOGIC'S, and I'm sure he solemnly feels that we might be fake. That was just the strength of his conviction that our aids were bad. I'd like to make a comment about those scientific articles, because if you read those scientific articles, they certainly claim that SCENTLOGIC'S do not work. But then those articles are also an example of bad science, an example of opinionated science, because from what we heard, that was not really the results they got. However, the lead author had his own opinion too, because he's an ex-ATF scientist that does not believe in anything other than using real target materials. But he came up with his opinion, which also again is an opinion where he's the only scientist that says that, because there are many other scientists that have tested SCENTLOGIC'S before and after, and have said that SCENTLOGIC'S is actually better than real target materials as an imprint aid. But so he came up with his opinion, and there are many other opinions out there, but Randy Hare decided to choose that one as the opinion to advance.
He just cherry picking what
He
opinion
cherry
is it.
picked. But then, how could you choose such an opinion when NIST, our flagship National Institutes of Standards, has actually validated SCENTLOGIC'S as the training aid of the future? If you Googled an article called Canine Chemistry and you put NIST in front, you will see that NIST has published an article saying that synthetic formulations such as SCENTLOGIC'S actually have proven to be superior to the use of real training aids, and that they foresee a time where canines would not really need to use real explosives anymore because of the efficacies that training aids, 21st century training aids such as SCENTLOGIC'S, can deliver.
And obviously, there's a need for products like SCENTLOGIC'S because I would imagine that it can't be that easy to go get explosives to train dogs or get drugs to train dogs. Real explosives, should I say.
Yeah, it's not particularly easy, and in the United States, it is because you could always get an ATF license, or you can get a DEA license to get explosives or narcotics. But I mean, a lot of practitioners do that simply due to their misconception of real. They feel that the narcotic or the explosive itself is the training aid, and not knowing that it's their odor that's a training aid. You know, a detector canine scent training aid is simply an odor producer. And I would like to see situations where our practitioners, when you have a training aid, you got to ask questions. If a training aid is just supposed to be an odor producer, you're supposed to ask it certain questions like, how old are you? How pure are you? Where are you from? But these questions are never asked, unfortunately. And even that being said, these materials are needed for their odors. But then when you take a narcotic, for instance, and you put it in a sealed plastic bag, the odor that comes out of that is not really the odor that's in the plastic bag itself. Some components of the scent are retained by the plastic bag because the chemistry is different. They cannot come out. So even when you want to talk about pseudos, it's ironic that the odor that comes out of through a plastic bag is a pseudo. However, people are of the inclination of like Lisa Albuquerque and Randy Hare. I think they don't have a true conception of what a training aid is. You know, they believe that the material in itself is the aid, but they do not know that the odor the material produces is actually the true aid. There are a couple of also. I would like us to be brief within this talk. However, there are a couple of clarifications I would also like to make with regards to Randy Hare's comments. There was a place where he stated that SCENTLOGIC'S is a hamburger without the meat. That is absolutely incorrect. SCENTLOGIC'S is the full hamburger with everything. That's the problem also that we try to talk about to practitioners such as Randy Hare about their misconceptions. It is true that within the community we say a dog smells the meat, a dog smells the cucumber, a dog smells the meat, it smells the ketchup, it smells the cheese, it smells the lettuce, it smells the buns within a hamburger. But for those that use operational target materials as their training aids, how good is their hamburger? How far are they sure that it's got a pickle in it? How far are they sure that it's got meat in it? How far are they sure that it's got a lettuce in it? They don't know. And how can it have if it's not pure? That's something that they need to really think about. You know, when you have cocaine in a plastic bag, and then, well, the odor that comes out of the plastic bag how could it be a full hamburger? You know, it would most probably be a hamburger without the cheese, a cheeseburger without the cheese, without the bun, and probably meat and lettuce. And it causes all these kinds of training aid configurations. They cause, they present outcomes. And the outcomes they present have been generalized over the years to an adage that says the only thing two trainers agree on is what the third one is doing wrong. I mean, that's a common saying within our community. The only thing two trainers agree on is what the third one is doing wrong. That saying can only come as a result of inconsistencies in training outcomes. That saying could only come as a regard of problems regarding training. And I could tell you categorically that those problems actually come as a result of inconsistent training aids. You know, there are two main sayings within our community. The number one saying is the one that I've just mentioned. The only thing two trainers agree on is what the third one is doing wrong. Now, as a scientist, such a saying only comes about due to non-standardization of training aids and a lack of understanding of training aids. The second saying, which is actually appropriate to this conversation, is a saying that goes, you know what you're finding, but you do not know what you're missing. And this saying is embodied in the Hare Anomaly. Because we have Randy Hare, whose dogs do not alert on SCENTLOGIX'S, a gold standard. But Randy Hare still has, he trains dogs and he sells them to police departments that still find drugs. Now, Randy Hare sells dogs to these police departments, and these police departments find enough drugs that they are not unhappy with Randy Hare. You know, so there's a two-way thing there. They are not unhappy with Randy Hare, but their dogs walk pure odor. So what is really going on here? What is going on here is that Randy Hare's dogs are finding dope on the streets based on the adulterants in the dope, and not because of the odor of the dope itself.
So from what I'm hearing, it's possible that a dope boy with 100% pure cocaine, Randy's dogs may miss those drugs.
Will miss, since they walk SCENTLOGIX'S. Since they walk SCENTLOGIX'S, it also means they would walk pure drugs.
I guess there's enough adulterated drugs in the streets.
Yeah,
to make Randy's dogs find something.
To make Randy's dog find something, and to make the departments that buy the dogs happy enough that they got good dogs.
But they don't know what they're missing.
No. So the statement, you know what you're finding and you don't know what you're missing, is it's a general statement within the community. And I think that Randy Hare's comments and all the videos that he has shown and all the proofs that he is trying to prove that SCENTLOGIX'S is a bad product actually validates that saying, that you know what you're finding, but you don't know what you're missing. And it might be actual that you're missing a lot, because what your dogs are finding it's based on them having a knowledge of the impurities in the training aid they were trained on, and not the odor of the operational target itself.
And the operational target is the key.
It is the key.
Not the other infiltrating odors.
Not all the other infiltrating odors. So it's a good thing that we made Randy Hare. We waited 10 years we're patient and we're scientists and we want true results ourselves. So for a 10 years of consistency on his part brings 10 years of validations. If you turn the table around, validation that yes, you don't know what you know what you're finding, but you don't know what you're missing. And he's the only one that has that anomaly. Now, we respect Randy Hare because he's a trainer, and he's a trainer that works hard, travels all over the country, and does his thing, and however, he discovered something unknowingly. I felt he didn't know what he discovered, so he decided to attack SCENTLOGIX'S. But then what he discovered was an anomaly. And from this anomaly, we could identify the origin of that saying that you know what you're finding, but you don't know what you're missing. And due to this, we would like to really attribute this knowledge to Randy because he published it. And that is why we would like to term it the Hare Anomaly.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. David ADEBIMPE, for explaining the Randy Hare Anomaly. And thank you very much.
Yeah, the Hare Anomaly.
The Hare Anomaly.
That's the anomaly given by a dog that seems to be finding aids, seems to be finding target materials by the basis of knowing operational odor, but however does not know operational odor, is finding these targets based on its impurities, however is finding enough of them to make the departments satisfied with the dog and deem the dog a good dog.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.